Today is Wednesday, June 11th, 2025, of the Gregorian calendar. It is also the fourth day of the fourth month, 6028, of the solar celestial calendar. The following testimonial revelation was originally recorded on Tuesday, June 10th, 2025, of the Gregorian calendar, as well as the third day of the fourth month, 6028, of the solar celestial calendar. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe, and that is through John. But many will not believe, as John came only and merely for a witness of the word. That's John chapter 1 of the King James Version Holy Bible, the 1611 Authorized Edition. I just read verses 1, 2, 6, and 7. In verse 1, the noun God is read twice. That means that there are two gods, and that is confirmed as the God of heaven and the God of the earth. Is also confirmed in the book called Ezekiel in chapter 34 and verse 11. And that reads, as I quote, "For thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I, even I, will both search my sheep and seek them out." End quote. And in this verse, the noun Lord is spelled with an uppercase L and a lowercase O-R-D, followed by God that's spelled in all caps of G-O-D. This indication that was given by the theologians of England lets the readers know that that was the Son that was speaking and not the Father. This I brought to the attention of this world before in my previous videos. Quote, "But now, thus saith the Lord," that's all caps, and that is my arm. When you read in the Bible, and when you see in the Bible, Lord, from left to right, with the letters L-O-R-D in all caps, the theologians of the world who transliterate these from England want you to know that they was referring to the Father of the two. That's both, the Father. So that's two. You must get that in your mind, clear in your mind before I read on. You must know that there's two. There's the Father and the Son. There's a Father and a Son in the Bible. The Father is known in all caps, L-O-R-D. And sometimes you see the L-O-R-D in all caps, and next to it you see the capital G and lowercase o-d. That's still the Father. There are also times when you're going to look in the Bible and you're going to see capital L, lowercase o-r-d. That's capital L, uppercase L, lowercase o-r-d. That's the Son. And sometimes you may find in the Bible capital L, uppercase L, lowercase o-r-d, and next to that you'll see God in all caps. That is still the Son. And that is what the theologians of Rome and of England wanted the world to know, especially in the last days. Now, as we go back to John chapter 1, I repeat verse 7 of John chapter 1, which says, I quote, "The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light,
that all men through him might believe, end quote. And in 1992, the one whom this world and my people of Jehudah only knew as, I quote, Yahweh ben Yahweh, end quote, he read a book that was written by whom the world only knew and still knows today as, I quote, Micah. In the Bible, they added the Morithite, according to Micah chapter 1 and verse 1, end quote. And when the one whom you only knew and know today, still, after 18 years of that vessel ascending back up into heaven and being cremated, the soul ascended back into heaven, May of 2007. He titled a book that was written by Micah. The title of that book today is still known as, I quote, I Bear Witness of the Son, Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, end quote. And that fulfills verse 7 of John chapter 1. In an interview in 1986, the one whom my people are still calling to this day, I quote in English, Yahweh ben Yahweh, end quote, he identified himself to a group of Time magazine scribes that flew down from New York, the state of New York, to interview him on that day. And during the interview, he identified himself as John, the prophet, the man. Take a listen for yourself.
But in the New Testament, you reject the emergence of the Messiah.
No, I am the Messiah that is prophesied.
So,
I am the Messiah of the New Testament.
but the books that talk about Jesus, they're not, are out of date or
That's prophetic. You see, Jesus, the man that is called, Jesus, remember his name is Yahshua.
yeah.
Yahshua was a disciple of John. John was the prophet. The man called Jesus, when he was baptized, baptized had nothing to do with the water. Again, the scriptures are written figuratively, literally, in metaphors, similes, in prose and in poetry, and full of allegories. So when you read of the man that was called Jesus being baptized and being put under water, then I would have to teach you what baptized means. You'd have to break down the word baptized in all of its letters. See, every word is scientifically composed of letters that are words within themselves. Every letter is a word. So when you break down the word baptized, you have B, which follows A, and I am A. Alpha. B follows the series of A. And B is also the word BE, which comes into existence as a result of A. So, therefore, John was prophesying about A coming, which is the first in the series. And the second set of the word is APT, meaning apt. Now, to be apt, you have to be, that meant that the man was baptized by John, had to become clever, adroit, sagacious, etc., in the ism of John. That made him an ist. That's why he was called John the Baptist. See, he too he came to be in the knowledge of Yahweh, and he then subsequently became apt in the ism, which is the dogma and the laws of Yahweh. So, since John was the one that was the prophet, then the man that was called Jesus was baptized by him. That made him a student and a disciple of John, not the one. And when he attempted to assume the mantle of the one, he began to teach secrets that were not to be taught until the time of the one to come. He was 2,000 years, 1,900 years early of his coming. And when he began to reveal the knowledge of who Satan was, John 8:44, when he began to reveal the knowledge of the Son, the knowledge of whose right to rule it was, He could not afford to be left alive. So for breaking the secret, for teaching the secret that he had learned in secret, he was killed for it. And that's why he was hung in his shorts without any clothes on, because he was initiated in that manner. That's why his collarbone was broken and his head was hung to the side. See? Because that's a sign that all men who study in secret understand quite well. I'm the only one to make that clear.
And now as I continue in John chapter 1, verse 8 reads as I quote, "He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world." Verse 10 reads, "He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not." Verse 11 says, "He came unto his own, and his own received him not." And verse 12, "But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name." And the name in question was a secret that no one knew. And that is according to Revelation chapter 19 and verse 12. And that reads, as I quote, "His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, and he had a name written that no man knew but he himself." End quote. This means that back in John chapter 1 and verse 12, the name could not have been, even in English, I quote, Yahweh. Even Yahweh ben Yahweh, which is not a name. I repeat, the God of the Hebrews does not have an English name. Those are English letters that pronounces an English name. So that way, it could not have been Yahweh. Neither could it have been the euphemized name that the Greeks placed in print as Jesus. In Espanol, Jesus. And in English, Jesus. Nevertheless, in John chapter 1 verse 13 it reads, "Which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God." Verse 14 says, "And the Word was made flesh, and dwelt among us. And in parentheses, we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father," close parentheses, "full of grace and truth." End quote. End of verse 14. Nevertheless, in the same chapter of John chapter 1, the Pharisees asked in verse 24, and in verse 25, they asked him and said to him, "Why baptizest thou then, if thou be not that Christ, nor Elias, neither the prophet?" And that was a follow-up from verse 19 of John chapter 1 that says, I quote, "And this is the record of John, when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, Who art thou?" And verse 20, "And he confessed and denied not, but confessed, saying, I quote, I am not the Christ." End quote. And verse 21, "And they asked him, What then? Art thou Elias? And he said, I am not. And they asked, Art thou the prophet, that prophet? And he answered, No. Then verse 22 goes on to read, I quote, Then said they unto him, Who art thou? That we may give an answer to them that sent us. That's the same scribes that were sent to the Temple of Love in Miami of Florida at the time. That was located, international headquarters, in 1986. These are the same souls that were back there then that came this generation in 1986. What sayest thou of thyself? And he sat there in the temple and he told them exactly what I am reading today to you: the dead and the blind, the deaf, the unlearned, the unknowledgeable. He said in verse 23, And in the temple of love that day, I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, Make straight the way of the Lord, as said the prophet Elias. And back to verse 25, And they asked him and said unto him, Why baptizest thou then, if thou be not the Christ, or Elias, neither the prophet? And this baptism is a metaphor of how he was in the temple of love from 1979, as we started in a community center in Brownsville, a suburb of Miami of Florida, in 1979, until November of 1990 in the temple, as he baptized. And in verse 26, he answered them, saying, I baptize with water. That water were the people. The people were the prophets of the Bible, the books of the Bible. He was baptizing with the people that are known as prophets in the Bibles. That's where he was teaching from, the book, the 66 books of the Bible, the people, the water. But there standeth one among you, whom ye know not. That means that the Christ was there back in the day standeth, according to verse 26 of John chapter 1. And he was among you, but they did not know me, whom you know not, even to this day. According to John chapter 14, verse 17. As I pause here for a moment and read that to you, John chapter 14. And begin at verse 16, which says, it's 15. If ye love me, keep my commandments. Verse 16, and I will pray the Father, he shall give you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever. Why would it read another comforter? Because those back in the days of, quote, Yahweh ben Yahweh, end quote, thought that he was the comforter. That's why another comforter is here today. As proven in verse 17, but you don't know me, you don't know him. As that reads, even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it seeth him not, neither knoweth him, but ye know him, those who be with me today, who were here with me back then. Why? For he dwelleth with you, and shall be in you. End quote. That's John chapter 14, verses 15, 16, and 17. And now back to John chapter 1. That will answer the questions to those scribes that were in his office that day. As John answered again in verse 26, saying, I baptize with water, but there standeth one among you, whom ye knew not, and you know not. He it is, in verse 27, whom coming after me is preferred before me, whose shoes latcheth I am not worthy to unloose. This is the mystery that my people of today in the world cannot receive. 11 of the same chapter. Nevertheless, the same Christ that was promised to come today is here today. The same Christ that was promised and promised his disciples over 2,025 years ago that he will return is back today. Take a look at that in Matthew chapter 24, beginning at verse 3, that says, I quote, "And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world?" Verse 4 says, "And Christ answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you." Verse 5, "For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." But the only name that they knew back in those days was Yahshua. Some knew Micah, and some knew Elijah, just as it said in John chapter 1. And also, just to let you know that the same Christ would come in the book called the Acts. In chapter 1, it confirms what is also found in John chapter 1, beginning at verse 4. Actually, verse 3 that says, I quote verse 3, "To whom also he shewed himself alive after his passion by many infallible proofs, being seen of them 40 days, and speaking of the things pertaining to the kingdom of God." Verse 4, "And being assembled together with them, commanded them that they should not depart from Jerusalem, but wait for the promise of the Father, which, saith he, ye have heard of me," referring back to John chapter 14. Verse 5, "For John truly baptized with water." For truly John baptized with water. For John truly baptized with water. I repeat, for John truly baptized with water. Baptized. "But ye shall be baptized with the Holy Ghost not many days hence." When they therefore were come together, they asked of him, saying, "Lord, wilt thou at this time restore again the kingdom of Israel?" And the kingdom back to Israel. And he said unto them, "It is not for you to know the times or the seasons which the Father hath put in his own power. But ye shall receive power after that the Holy Ghost is come upon you," in verse 8, "and ye shall be witnesses unto me both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and in America and unto the uttermost part of the earth." And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. Today that's called by the U.S. government a UFO, and by NORAD spacecraft, celestial spacecrafts, the spacecrafts of God, the God of the Hebrews. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up in a spaceship, in verse 10, behold, 2 men stood by them in white apparel. And in verse 11, which also said,
"Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven?" You see, we said this 2024 years ago when we were dressed in all white. And now we in the last and evil days, symbolic of the purple that we're wearing. To say this again to you men of Galilee, 2024 years later. Why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Christ, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. How did he come 2024 years ago? He came through the womb of a woman of Judah.
The same one, the same Christ is here today. And that's confirmed in Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 8. And that says, I quote, the Christ, in fact, verbatim, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever, end quote. So how do you know when the Christ comes? How would you know it's him? Because he would be able to decipher and decode the entire Bible, all 66 books, especially the book called Revelation. He will be able to decode all 404 verses of the book called Revelation, of 22 chapters. For example, back to Matthew chapter 24, in these days, the last days when he returned, verse 15 says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. In parentheses, whoso readeth, let him understand.
I found out who I was, and I came into the presence of John the Baptist, who we know now was the Holy Spirit here, set here by our living God, the true and living God, who has been made manifested through his son, Mika Yahweh, who I'm with now, who I bear witness of here in Miami. It's been a whirlwind of events in my life towards coming to myself to share this testimony with you. I just know when I heard that voice, I was comforted, and I felt as though I had found whom and what I was looking for at this juncture in my existence. So, in saying that, I continued on my search and my journey to gain comprehension of self. And what was my purpose for being here? Of course, being born with the name Daniel, Mika Yahweh gave me comprehension that, of course, that's a part of who you are, but you aren't Daniel. Your name is Daniel.
And furthermore, in verse 24, it reads, I quote, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall shew great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect, end quote. This means that there will be some that will arise that were taught by Yahweh ben Yahweh, even in prison, and they will assume the mantle that he spoke to them only merely to teach them to become the anointed one of him.
Which veil is done away in Christ. Christ means anointed one. So I'm trying as the anointed one. I am the anointed king of Yahweh, King David, who he raised up in these last days unto you. He restored my soul. That means I have the spirit, the mind, and the soul.
But he was not Ma'ab. He was merely a vessel that Ma'ab used, known as John, as you heard a few moments ago and witnessed. He said so himself. But back to Matthew chapter 24 and verse 15, again it says in part, therefore shall ye see the abomination. It's going to be an abomination of desolation that was spoken by Daniel, originally in the book called Daniel. And in parentheses, the most important part, which is whoso readeth, let him understand. That means there will be only one to come back in the last days who will be able to read that in English from the original Hebrew and interpret it and give that understanding to others to know that it is him, the same Christ, as confirmed in Acts chapter 1 and verse 10, as well as Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 8. So how so? Well, in the last days, it said there would be an abomination of desolation. So let's go to Daniel chapter 12. And let's see what that abomination would be, the desolation at a time of trouble. In Daniel chapter 12 and verse 1, it says, I quote, "And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book." End quote. So in this verse are two words that are codexed and cryptic. Those two words is stand up. The same stand, S-T-A-N-D in English, and up. That has three letters missing. In those two words, there are three letters in English that are missing. Let's go back now to Matthew chapter 24 and verse 15. And in that verse, you will also find the word standeth. You will find the word stand, S-T-A-N-D, stand, in the holy place. Also, stand at the end of that verse that you could not see, which is the suffix of understand. This means that this stand will come under another prophecy. Let him understand. That means someone will come in the last days with this stand, S-T-A-N-D, add those three letters that are missing to come under another prophecy. And that prophecy will be found in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. And that says, I quote, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come." Perilous times shall come. Verse 2 says, "For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection," in verse 3, "truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away." End of verse 5, end quote. Also, in 2 Peter chapter 2, in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 1, it says, "But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privately shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction." And notice that it says that the Lord bought them as if he bought them for a price, buying them with money. That means that the Lord bought them away and took them from Satan. But they refused to accept the price, the purchase. That means that Christ bought them from the slave master who bought them during slavery. He bought them back with a price, but they refused to accept that merchant, the Lord, the Christ. But here you see that they're here today. All are here today. So what is hidden in 2 Timothy chapter 2, chapter 3? 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 1. What is hidden in 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 1? I repeat, quote, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come," end quote. Well, those perilous times are here. And there was a time of trouble that still is, that began on Friday of this month, this calendar Friday, that was known as June 6, 2025. And for the record, today is the third day of the fourth month of our solar calendar. I repeat, this is the third day of the fourth month, and I shall rise again, and I have, on this third day of the fourth month in the year 6028. That's 6028, or 2025 years after it was promised in Acts chapter 1 that the same Christ will return. And according to the calendar of the Pope Gregory the 13th, the Gregorian calendar that this world is being governed by today, today is known as Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. That's for the record. So what is it that's happening today that started on Friday, June 6, 2025? It's called a time of trouble that never was since there was a nation. It was the same time that started in the city of angels, known as Los Angeles, California, and that's riots.
Chaos in downtown Los Angeles as the National Guard is deployed to help with large protests. Good morning, everyone. I'm Raul Martinez. Tension is escalating in response to President Trump's deployment of the National Guard. Now, protesters blocked off a major highway, set fire to cars as well. California's governor now saying he will sue the president. Let's get right to NBC 10's Alicia Palumbo, who's live outside Boston City Hall now with the new information. Alicia.
Well, as you said, California Governor Gavin Newsom now saying he will sue the Trump administration for deploying the National Guard without checking with him first. As you said, cars were being set on fire as protesters continued to clash with members of the National Guard who've been sent to L.A. following 3 days of protests over ICE arrests. Protesters at one point even marching onto the 101 freeway after police moved them away from the federal building there. L.A. police have expanded their unlawful assembly declaration to include all of downtown Los Angeles. With few exceptions, anyone in that area will be subject to arrest. The chief of the LAPD says he's increasingly concerned for the safety of his officers as pieces of concrete and incendiary devices are being thrown at them as they try to disperse crowds. Governor Newsom also challenging threats by Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, who suggested that the governor and L.A. mayor could be arrested if their actions are viewed as interfering with immigration enforcement.
Donald Trump has created the conditions you see on your TV tonight. He's exacerbated the conditions. He's, lit the proverbial match. He's putting fuel on this fire ever since he announced he was taking over the National Guard. An illegal act, an immoral act, an unconstitutional act.
This violence that I've seen is disgusting. It's escalated now since the beginning of this incident. What we saw the first night was bad. What we've seen subsequent to that is getting increasingly worse and more violent.
And there will be an emergency rally in solidarity with the people of L.A. in favor of ending ICE raids. That'll be held here at Boston City Hall Plaza at 2 o'clock this afternoon. For now, we're live in Boston. Alicia Palumbo, NBC 10 Boston.
Riots, unruly men and women, an uproar. And this is now Tuesday, and that riot has now escalated into other cities.
And two of Texas's largest cities joined in the anti-ICE protests last night. You're looking at both scenes right here on your screen. Austin on the right, that's where things got out of hand there. E-scooters were thrown across the road downtown, and people were seen knocking over traffic barriers. And then you have Dallas on the left side of your screen here. That is where police declared the gathering an unlawful assembly. Moments before our newscast, I spoke with Peyton May. She's a reporter from our sister station up in Dallas, KDFW. She shared hundreds of people gathered in a West Dallas neighborhood, Trinity Groves there, and there was at least one arrest.
Are being planned across the country on the same day. A military parade will take place in D.C. Local 10's Glenna Milberg continues our live team coverage with events being planned in Miami. Glenna.
Nicole, in Miami-Dade and in Broward, multiple events by people who have staged events and protests just like this before, especially here along Biscayne Boulevard. These were planned prior to the immigration protests in California, but the theme is sort of generally the same: no kings. It's against authoritarian power.
For Floridians, too, hundreds of people came out today to Tampa City Hall to demonstrate for hours in solidarity with those protesters in L.A. Fox 13's Evan Moon was there in Tampa and joins us now in the newsroom. Evan, hopefully things were peaceful there.
Hi, Chris. Thankfully, there was no violence out there today, but tensions did run high between these two groups. Tampa police officers having to intervene at times. The immigration issue at the forefront, with Florida conducting its largest immigration operation in the state's history just this year.
Say it loud, say it clear. Immigrants are welcome here.
Which includes cities in Texas, in the Carolinas.
Protests now in LA are sparking rallies closer to home. Queen City News anchor Savannah Rudisell joins us now with a look at what is now planned in the Charlotte region.
We understand that there's kind of a convergence, right, of separate protests, some in response to what's happening in LA now, others that have been set for a while. We know that more protests are scheduled
in Michigan.
In our area are preparing for their own protest this coming weekend.
13 Your Side's Lauren Baker spoke to an organizer of one of the local chapters of the Indivisible organization. And Lauren, what do they want people to know about this weekend?
Well, Elena and Juliet, Jenny Frazier says she and others aren't fearful for what could happen here in terms of what's happening in LA, but she says they are prepared to voice their opinions in the safest ways possible.
Eyes all around the country are zeroed in on what's happening in LA. It's grabbed the attention of activists like Jenny Frazier.
And in Illinois.
Through downtown Chicago, protests against President Trump's immigration policies.
That crowd is now headed to Fort Plaza.
And that is where we find Dane Placco. Dane?
Yeah, literally headed to Federal Plaza. That's where we are right now. And as you can see back there, the crowd that has been marching around the loop, well, actually now it looks like they're heading west on Adams as we pan over and show you the crowd walking by. About 150 people who had gathered earlier this afternoon around 3 o'clock at the immigration.
In Michigan, this riot is going to escalate in many other cities, including Louisiana. Some cities in Louisiana. These are states I'm naming. And also in Florida, this riot, they call it peaceful demonstrations. Now they're going to turn it into a time of trouble that has not been since there was a nation. And at the same time, that started June 6, 2025, in Los Angeles, California. So what's the perilous times? It's hidden in the word perilous. Perilous. This means that in the last days, when these perilous times occur, there's something hidden in the word perilous, and something in the stand up, and something in the pent, P-E-N-T, that's hers, that will be taking place during the same time. That means when you add on the L-Y to stand, the L-Y to stand, then you have Stanley. That's the two letters from stand up. That's the two letters at the end of stand, which is L-Y. L is a homophone for Elohim. L, God. L, Elohim. And the Y is the result translated in English for Yod or Yahweh. Why? Yahweh. That's God is Yahweh, standing up. Yahweh is not the name of the God of the Hebrews. Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh is a tetragrammaton, an appellation of the Christ. That means from left to right, the door, the way, the truth, and the life. That's 3 Hebrew characters. 3. One of the 3 positioned twice, which is Hey. That is the appellation of the Christ. As, again, I repeat, by truth, the name, the so-called name of the God of the Hebrews is not Yahweh, spelled in English from left to right, Y-A-H-W-E-H. That is not the name of the God of the Hebrews, especially in English. This universe was created by the God of the Hebrews. That's Hebrew God. That means he has an Hebrew name. In other words, what is known to my people, world-renowned today, even from 1979, as again I quote, Yahweh, spelled from left to right, Yahweh. That is not the name of the God of the Hebrews. That is merely a transliteration from Hebrew into English of 3 Hebrew characters, 3, of which one of the 3 characters, Hebrew, is positioned twice, and that would be known as Hey, the Hey. The 5th Hebrew character, or alphabet, should you prefer. And these 3 Hebrew characters, one positioned twice, that positions 4 words in cryptic, is known as an appellation of the Christ. Historically, and all the theologians of Rome and of Europe, of England, they all know that those 4 positions, 3 Hebrew characters, one position twice, is merely an appellation of the Christ that he told his disciples over 2,025 years ago. That's now hidden in the scriptures of the Gospels, and particularly the Gospel that's known as John. And those 3 Hebrew characters, one position twice, are known from right to left as Yod, Hey, Wab, Hey. However, from left to right, they are known as Hey, Wab, Hey, Yod in Hebrew. However, in English, they are known from left to right as H, W, H, Y. Again, from left to right, H, W, H, Y. And each one of these Hebrew characters, now translated into English with 2 vowels added, the A and the E, are known as what was said in John chapter 10, as well as John chapter 14, is known as the door, the way, the truth, and the life. By truth, in John chapter 10 and verse 6, is we will find the parable, as I quote John chapter 10 verse 6, and that says, I quote, "This parable spake the Christ unto them, but they understood not what things they were which he spake unto them." Why? Because they had to be reminded in verse 9 that he is the door. And that would be the first from the left, the Hey, the second Hey, or the first Hey from left to right, but the second Hey from right to left. And that reads in verse 9, I quote, "I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out, and find pasture," end quote. That is Hey. That's the first Hey from the left, which is the door. And furthermore, in chapter 14 of the same book called John, in verse 6, again, there's the 6 again, the Christ goes on to add the remaining 3 positions, which from left to right would be the Wab, the Hey, and Yod. These 3 positions are hidden again in John chapter 14 and verse 6. And that reads, as I quote, "The Christ saith unto him, I am the way," that's Wab, "the truth," that's Hey, and the life, that's Yod, the remaining 3. "No man cometh unto the Father, but by me," end quote. John chapter 14, verse 6. And when you summarize that all together, from left to right, you have the door in John chapter 10 and verse 9. And then you have the way, the truth, and the life in John chapter 14 and verse 6. And that is known today. That created the Tetragrammaton. The Yod He Wav He from right to left, YHWH from left to right. Again, that's Yod He Wav He from right to left, or YHWH translated into English from left to right. And that is the mystery and the truth of what those characters mean. That's the Tetragrammaton. That's standing up. That's to stand up. The L and the Y. Elohim, Yahweh. That means Yahweh is standing, which is cryptic in Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. Now the up is the C in front of the U. That's C-U-P. As he promised also in Revelation chapter 21 and verse 1, there will be no more C. That's why the C has been removed from cup of the up in Daniel chapter 12 and verse 1. So when we replace the C back to up in front of the U on the left side, then we have cup. And when you put those two together, you have Stanley Cup. That means the Stanley Cup will be taking place during this unruly and perilous times. It has never been since there was a nation, even to the same time. So who are the participants in the Stanley Cup, of course, which is hockey? Who are the participants? Well, that's hidden in 2 Timothy chapter 3. The first team is in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. Hidden in perilous. Again, that's P-R-I-L-O-U-S. Now, when you look at this word perilous, then you will find the Oilers right there. The Oilers. That means you're going to take the O, the I, the L, the E, the R, and the S. And you're going to have Oilers again, in that order from left to right. O, I, L, E, R, S. The Oilers. And the only two letters that are left is the U and the P. So place that side by side. The U and the P, and here you are right back with up. Stand up. Oilers, hidden in 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 1. You got that? So, where are the Panthers? Where's the Panthers? A pant, a P-A-N-T. Where are they? Well, the Panthers with P-A-N-T are with hers. Who hers? Well, in order to find hers, you gotta first come out of her, Yehuda. According to Revelation chapter 18, verse 4, I said, come out of her. And that Panthers is hidden in Amos chapter 2, verse 7, with her. Her is the same as his, but her is also a maid. That's Amos chapter 2, verse 7, King James Version, that reads, I quote, that pant after the dust of the earth on the head of the poor, and turn aside the way of the meek. And a man and his father will go in unto the same maid to profane my holy name, end quote. And there's the her. There's a panther. Where's the panther? Well, you have P-A-N-T. And this P-A-N-T, which is the only place in the King James Version Bible where it's found, was hidden under Strong's H7602. That means to gasp, to pant after, to long for, to breathe heavily, to gasp, to snuff up, snuff up, to thirst for one's blood from actions of animals, figuratively, to trample. This trample and trample upon is now happening in the riots. They're trampling upon one another. They're crushing one another to crush. They're crushing one another in these riots. And they're also gasping for air because of the tear gas, the canisters, the rubber bullets. That's the PANT. So where's the her? The her is hidden in the maid, the same maid that's hidden under H5291 of the Strong's Concordance. And that maid is known as a girl, a damsel, a female servant of a young woman. Again, that's Strong's H5291. And that brings upon the noun her. Now, when you put the pant, P-A-N-T, and the her, H-E-R, together, there's more than one. There's more than one maid. They're maids. Just like there's more than one panther. There's more than one panther. Then you end up with panthers. P-A-N-T-H-E-R-S. The panthers. And that means that the Oilers and the Panthers would be in the Stanley Cup during this time when the riots would take place in the last days when the Christ returns. Or did you know that? Only the Christ of the Hebrews was promised to come back in the last days to reveal the secrets, just as it was promised by John, that he would reveal secrets in the last days upon his return, that you heard during this presentation. It was also promised that the dead would hear my voice, and when they hear my voice, they will rise out of their graves. And finally, here is another secret that was kept through prophecy to be revealed today at my return. And that would be in addition to what this sport is called between the Oilers and the Panthers, that's known today as the Stanley Cup. Of course, we know that that sport today is called hockey. Now, hockey was also hidden by Mansold, that was known at one time, over 2,025 years ago, as Yahshua. And I hid this hockey in the scrolls called Yahshua. That would be the book after Deuteronomy, in chapter 11 and verse 6. And now the King James Version Bible, the King James Version Holy Bible of Joshua chapter 11 verse 6, it reads as I quote, "And the Lord said unto Joshua, Be not afraid because of them, for tomorrow about this time will I deliver them up all slain before Israel. Thou shalt haul their horses and burn their chariots with fire." End quote. Now take notice of the word I used toward the end of this verse. I'll quote again. Thou shalt haul horses in part. That word H-O-U-G-H, haul, that's what the translators put there of England, opposed to what was there in Hebrew, which is known as akar. Akar. That's spelled from right to left. Ayin, Kof, Resh. And that means to pluck up, to root up, or to be plucked up, or to cut, like a hamstring. To root up, or rooted up, digged up. However, that's what they placed there in the meaning, in translation, that I placed there for the word Hock. And that'll be in English from left to right, H-O-C-K. H-O-C-K, Hock. Now, when you go, now this reference, by the way, is in Strong's H6131. That's where you'll find a car for how, H-O-U-G-H, for how. However, when you look up this word and you place this word Hock, H-O-C-K, in the same concordance, that will take you to the same book, the same chapter, the same verse. Again, notice Joshua chapter 11, verse 6. And you'll only find it one time in translation in another Bible, which is the American Standard Version Bible, the ASV Bible, the American Standard Version Bible. And as I read now, I'm going to quote the very same verse, the very same book, chapter, and verse of Joshua, as Joshua chapter 11, verse 6. And I'm going to quote it verbatim so you can see what was hidden in secret that I'm revealing today, to go along with the sport that is now taking place at the Stanley Cup between the Oilers and the Panthers. And that reads, I quote, "And Jehovah said unto Joshua, Be not afraid because of them, for tomorrow at this time will I deliver them up all slain before Israel. Thou shalt hock their horses and burn their chariots with fire." And as you heard, and as you turn and read that for yourself, or look it up, you'll find the word H-O-C-K there, opposed to H-O-U-G-H. And of course, we all know now that this H-O-C-K is the prefix that's missing the suffix for hockey. That would be the E and the Y. Again, the E and the Y. The E and the Y. So like with the E and the Y of Stanley, the E and the Y, like the L-E-Y of Stanley, E-Y. So when you add the E and the Y at the end of hock, then you have hockey. And that's hidden in Joshua chapter 11, verse 6. And that means that this is another secret between man and mankind that Yahshua kept hidden in secret for over 2,028 years from his world. Again, that would be the revelation that extends on to the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers that are now in the Stanley Cup in hockey. And right now, today, again, known as June 10th, 2025, they have played now a total of 3 games. The third game was played on last night, Monday, June 9th, 2025. And the Florida Panthers are now leading the series 2-1, only to go on to win the entire Stanley Cup for the second year in a row. As we sit here in South Florida waiting for my ARB to come. You best hurry to Florida while the time is at hand. This is not a coincidence. And let me also say that the world is now facing all of prophecy that was promised to be fulfilled today in the entire book called Matthew chapter 24. And the end is near. In fact, we're in the last days. But the very end of these days knoweth no man, only my Father, my ARB, which is in heaven. No man knoweth the day or the hour. but my Father only. Not even the angels of heaven knows when he's going to bring all of this to an abrupt end. But there is a day coming this summer that was also prophetically promised in Malachi chapter 4. This entire planet is going to burn like an oven. It's going to burn up the wicked. It's going to get hot. It's going to be so hot until transformers, electrical transformers, are going to blow. The power plants are not going to be able to carry the load of the power that's going to be needed to generate air conditioning. Some cities are going to be without power for weeks, maybe even months. Can you imagine the heat strokes that's going to ensue? I've given you now the revelation of what's happening today during the perilous times, according to Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. A time of trouble unlike any other that has never been, such there was a nation. Even to the same time, in that time of trouble is riots in every major city in the United States of Babylon, also spiritually known as Egypt, according to Revelation chapter 11, verse 8, and you are in it. So to mine people, mine angels that are dressed in purple, and those who are obedient and are no longer wearing white, following the white-minded of my people of Judah. Why are you still wearing white? You're wearing white because whom you are following in appellation that's no longer in existence wore white. He even said so himself.
Mentality, and I'm not coming back to it. Ever. That's over and done, and it's finished. And you can read Matthew chapter 5, verse 8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see Yahweh. In verse 16, let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, Yahweh, which is in heaven. So, you can't do this without the knowledge of your name and live it. You can't walk in my light anymore. It's over. See, all of you been wearing white because I wore it. Look at how
you wore white and wearing white because he wore white. But to my people that are now dressed in purple to show royalty, which is the same color of the robe that the soldiers that they placed on the Christ during crucifixion. And it wasn't the soldiers, it was his own people who did that. They placed a purple robe on Yahshua during the crucifixion. So why are you still wearing white when Yahshua himself wore purple? Or did you not know that? See, some of you, just about all of you, all of ye, not you, ye, it's a difference. You're following one another. You know, one say praise, the other one say Yahweh. That's the truth. When one of you sneezes, the other one will blow your nose. And you didn't even sneeze. But the soldiers, the so-called soldiers, his own people, according to Acts chapter 5, verse 30, they slew him and hanged him on a tree and placed a purple robe on him, according to John chapter 19, verse 2. And verse 5. John chapter 19, verses 2 and 5 authenticates and confirms that they placed a purple robe on the Christ at the crucifixion. And even Pilate himself said, behold the man dressed in purple. So to my people that are dressed in purple, with no further ado, I am going to greet you and leave you again with shalom, which is peace in Hebrew, not shalom. Shalom is a man. I am shalom. And left record of that in Micah chapter 5 and verse 5. Shalom is a man. I'm shalom. I'll leave you with shalom. And also we leave you with Anoki Ahab, which is Hebrew for, in English, I love you. Yehuda, mine angels. I love you.
Surface, however, lies a growing sense that the United Kingdom is coming apart at the seams. King's College London professor of war studies David Betts set off alarm bells this year by saying Britain is headed towards civil war, and he advised people living in its large cities to move before the violence starts.
Imagine Northern Ireland scale, or Northern Ireland in intensity, but on a completely national scale. Attacks on public figures, judges, potentially politicians.
London Daily Telegraph columnist Tim Stanley told us he agrees with Betts that Britain is heading for open sectarian conflict, possibly war, and there's nothing we can do to stop it.